is your Monday
Man.
MVP?
Well, I tell you what, as far as my bankroll goes, a big thanks to my MVP from Saturday night, Jimmy Covers, James Franklin.
Oh, God.
Oh, my man, getting the cover. No, we take no knees when we know what the spread is, but he's not my MVP for the weekend. It's real hard to argue against Ronald Acuna Jr. I mean, Mookie Betts just had an August of a lifetime. He hit 455 with 11 homers in the month of August. His OPS was up over 1,300. And Acuna still is burying him in the NL MVP race because he's been that much better all season long. 30-60 club, 450-foot homers that land somewhere in Orange County. It's real hard to argue against that dude. But I got to go with Shedeur Sanders because without Shedeur Sanders' performance Saturday afternoon in Fort Worth, without Colorado doing what they did, I don't know if the Coach Prime era doesn't already hit the biggest possible speed bump, and we're all just kind of fluffing it off as, yeah, we knew this would happen when Deion got to the Power 5 conferences, Power 4 conferences, whatever they are. We knew this was going to happen. We knew he couldn't keep it up once he left the SWAC and the HBCUs, but instead, this is the kind of moment Saturday afternoon for the Buffaloes beating TCU the way they did that may just completely flip college football on its head, as if it hasn't already been shaken up over the last 10 years like it's in a snow globe already. This is going to do even more in that regard. So my MVP for MVP Monday, Shedeur Sanders.
You know, Caleb Williams looking very good, but is against Nevada, and it's almost like a makeup test. You know, it's almost like they failed the cupcake test the first week with the spread, so they had to make it up. So get Caleb Williams out of there. That was supposed to happen. Gordon Sargent, I mean, what does that say about the non-amateurs on the team that an amateur had to come and help out? So while that's very noble and big, and I get that, I don't necessarily know if that's the MVP move is for the weekend as well. You mentioned Ronald Acuna Jr. I mean, every stat head is probably, it's got to be him. I've never seen anything go that fast, but as you mentioned, Chris, this has been going on all season, so I'm with you with Shedeur Sanders. Look, the guy only had 8 incomplete passes, right? And we're not talking about a guy that used his legs to try and extend plays or anything like that. I think at one point it was negative 32 yards on the sacks that he took. So we're not talking about a guy who's just going to default to his legs if things were sped up. It's 110 down on the field in Fort Worth, on the road against the team that when you last saw them, they're in the college football playoff. So I give it to Shedeur Sanders because, look, I think with his performance, it just bloomed the conversation about how many great quarterbacks are going to be going into the NFL draft that you weren't talking about other than Caleb Williams. So we've gone from maybe just talking about one quarterback after week 0 about who's the eye of the prize for the NFL to now potentially 5 or 6 of them. And I think Shedeur Sanders kind of helped open that window by using his arm. I mean, 4 guys all with over 100 yards receiving? That's absolutely sick. So I'm with you, Chris. Shedeur Sanders is the Monday MVP.
But I'm watching Notre Dame, and I'm watching Sam Hartman, an experienced quarterback. And I don't want to oversimplify things. I don't. But if you do not have a quarterback, you're not going to win in college football. And sometimes the simple difference between being a good or even very good team and being a truly great team is the quarterback. Sam Hartman's been around for a decade and a half, it feels like. And he goes into Notre Dame with a ton of experience, cool, calm, collected, and able to lead those guys. NC State on the road, not a problem for Notre Dame. Notre Dame goes in there and handles it by 10, in my opinion. And that's the game I have an eye on because that will tell me, is Notre Dame going to be legit this year? Because Notre Dame's got to go undefeated. You talk about teams that to get into the playoff, how much do they have to do? Notre Dame's got to go undefeated because they don't have a conference championship game. A one-loss Notre Dame not getting in ahead of a one-loss SEC runner-up. So this is where we start to find out, I think, this weekend, whether Notre Dame is legit or not, or whether it's just another year where Notre Dame starts off in the top 15 and slowly filters their way down the top 25 rankings, and you look up around Thanksgiving and they're not even ranked anymore. I said it earlier when we talked about Florida State LSU. It's all about the quarterbacks in some instances, or at the very least, you can only go as far as your quarterback will take you. Clemson made a very distinct decision last year to go with Cade Klubnik, and DJ Uiagalelei heads out to Oregon State and looked really good yesterday, by the way. But they've committed to Klubnik now, and he looked good. I'll give him credit. The question is he enough? And he goes up against a really good quarterback, transfer Riley Leonard tonight from Duke. If this game is all about the quarterbacks, 13 is a big number for me. Duke was very good last year, especially by Duke standards. 9-4. Clemson had some disappointments, at least by Clemson standards, right? So the practical side of me says, hey, come on. It's Clemson. You know they're going to want to start strong. On the road in the ACC is nothing for them. But the other side of me says, if it's a battle of quarterbacks, I might take Riley Leonard over Cade Klubnik.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think this is one of those situations where it's the battle of the spread, right? And we saw it in one game over the weekend we'll get to in a little bit. But I think Clemson knows, especially with Florida State winning and getting a win over a top 5 team, Clemson really has to put the gas on and get the numbers up. So I think they're going to cover the spread. I think they're at a point now where, like, hey, if Florida State lost last night, they could still win and win comfortably and not cover the spread where you think the points are too much. But because of who's now, like Florida State impressed so much that Clemson now has to put itself back in this conversation and in a national televised game on the road. I think you're going to see Dabo Swinney. I think he's really going to have to put his foot on the gas and not be like, oh, yeah, we won by 10.
This one is really interesting. And I don't just say this as someone in Pittsburgh, as someone who is a lifelong born and bred Steelers fan. I say this because you've got a lot of interesting dynamics at play in this game. Let's start with, which is sort of a basic tenet of betting, which is watch the team out west coming east, right? That's to play a 1:00 Eastern kickoff, okay? So we set that on the back burner, and it stays warm, and we stir it every couple of minutes. And then we're going to add to the meal the fact that George Kittle, we're still not sure, is he going to practice this week? Is he going to be ready to go, George Kittle? When is the last time he has practiced? I can't remember. It's been at least a few weeks. And then
WrestleMania.
We've got Brock Purdy, right? Is Purdy legit, or is Purdy just the guy who happened to manage Kyle Shanahan's offense down the stretch last year? That's on one side of the ball. On the other side of the ball, is Nick Bosa even going to be there? Nick Bosa still in the midst of contract negotiations with the 49ers about a possible extension. If it doesn't get done before Thursday or Friday, is Nick Bosa involved in this game? And then, oh, by the way, now that we've got the sides cooking, let's get the entree out, which is Kenny Pickett and the Steelers didn't fail to score a touchdown in the preseason. Okay, you can tell me all you want about who they played in the first and third preseason games, some second and third stringers from Atlanta and Tampa, and I'll say, you know what? You're absolutely right. They should succeed against those guys. But when I look back at that middle preseason game, KJ, against the Bills' first teamers, the Steelers' defense, I don't think allowed a first down, let alone any points, and the Steelers' offense scored twice in 2 drives as well against, I recall seeing Jordan Poyer and most of the Bills' first team defense out there. So that being said, the Steelers getting 2.5 at home in this situation, really interesting to me.
What's even more interesting is look at that money line. It's only plus 120. It's just above even money for the Steelers on the money line. So I think the odds makers factor in a lot of these things. Is Brock Purdy for real? Let's eliminate the 1:00 game for a West Coast team because it's their first game, right? It's not like they played the previous week. So this is their first game. They get to wake up at regular time and whatnot. But this is where Mike Tomlin's ability to frustrate a young quarterback can come in. And you always have to be conscious of who's the new kid on the block, and they come out swinging week 1, and it could be the Steelers, right? The Steelers are kind of this under-the-radar, sexy team that people are talking about because if these young pieces on offense get it together and you've got a defensive-minded coach, you may have something that you weren't expecting. There's always a team that you weren't expecting to pop the way they did last year with Seattle. This year it could be the Steelers. Just everybody's talking about all these other AFC teams. So if you're one of these AFC teams that could be on the come up and nobody sees it, and you're the 49ers coming from a conference that's super weak, that really by default, you're 1-2 in the conversation. I like Pittsburgh in the upset in this game on the road. And again, on that side of the stadium where kicks seem to go to hell, right? This could play a factor if you have a young quarterback who doesn't successfully get the team into the end zone. Christian McCaffrey can only do so much for you. Right. And with no Nick Bosa out there, your young quarterback doesn't have to worry about a defensive pass rush that's just going to be absolutely dominant. At plus 120, I like the Steelers on the money line.